We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You are listening to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy, a secret ritual where entrepreneurs acquire highly classified and confidential business knowledge that the top 1% of income earners don't want you to know. And now, your host, Maddie Milligan.
What is up, my fellow conspirator and conspirators? Welcome to The Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo! Today I want to talk to you about polarity in marketing. So, you've probably heard about this before if you're familiar with Russell Brunson, specifically his book, Expert Secrets, where he talks about how to create a mass movement. And there's three parts that he talks about. The first part is the attractive character. The second is the future-based cause. And then the final one is a new opportunity. So I want to focus, though, on the attractive character. And specifically, there's one of the rules there where he talks about not being boring and how to get your audience to be fascinated with what you're talking about. And he says that if you're boring, people aren't going to connect with you. He's watched a lot of experts over the past 10 years, and he's been trying to see why some last and others don't. And the main thing that he's really noticed is that the ones who do succeed are very prolific, and they're very polarizing. And he uses this idea of the prolific index, where some ideas are going to be very mainstream, right? Where it's very common knowledge as to what the answer would be, and whatever the ideas are currently being taught, it's really meant for the masses, and it's shown through traditional mediums. But then at the other end of the polarity index, there are these basically borderline crazy people, and they're in these crazy zones, right? And you might recruit some people. It's really hard to get the masses to take action, right? So what you want to do is, with your marketing message, you want them to be polarizing, where it's not too crazy, but it's not too mainstream and neutral. Now, what I'm going to talk about is probably going to trigger some people, all right? Because I'm going to talk about President Donald Trump. And I'll be honest, I am in the middle, basically, of the entire political spectrum, to be honest. Like, I hold some, I guess, left views, some right views, and I live in socialist Canada, so that can give you an understanding, I guess, of my upbringing, and I'm really just for helping other people, to be honest, and I don't want to go too in-depth into which economic system is better, but let's talk about Trump a little bit, all right? Because right now there's this whole thing happening with his impeachment, and he was just impeached, I think, a couple of days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. So he was actually impeached, and then it's going to go to the Senate, and they're going to vote for that. But Trump won the entire election because he's extremely polarizing, right? There are people out there who absolutely despise him, and they get triggered even when you say the word Trump, right? They're like, oh, they get all upset, and they're like, he's mean, he's orange, he's a jerk, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He should be impeached. But then there's the other people who are die-hard Trump supporters. He can do no wrong with them. He's absolutely perfect. He's what they aspire to be in the future. And essentially what he's done is, when people get upset with him, right, if they're against him, usually they're probably Democrats, and they're upset with something he said or he did, or they just don't like him in general. They haven't liked him for a long time because he's a massive capitalist and he's Republican, so they despise him. All the other people are going to come and back him up, right? I remember Grant Cardone talked about this, where that's what he would do. He talked about this initially, where you have to basically talk about, you'll say things in your marketing messages where a lot of people are going to disagree with, and you're going to get some haters and you're going to get some trolls, but you yourself don't even have to do a lot of the reputation management. A lot of your fans, right, your diehard supporters who love absolutely everything you do, your true fans, they're going to come to bat for you, and they're going to defend you, and that creates a lot of buzz around you organically. It gets people on both sides talking about you. And again, as long as you're in the front of people's minds, that's really what you want to do with your marketing. And Trump, people say that he's dumb, but man, this guy is one of the smartest marketers of all time. Sure, I understand he's had businesses that have failed, right? He's had casinos that have failed. He's had his Trump universities was shut down as well. And but guy is a very smart marketer. He charges, I think, a mil or a couple of $1 million to speak for like 60 to 90 minutes. And I went and saw him maybe 10 years ago when The Apprentice was on, and really just to kind of understand and really just to see what it's like to be in a room and really see how other people, I guess, buy into him and how they, and it's funny because in that room, I remember there were people who were like, not liking what he was saying. They were frowning at what he was talking about. They were not smiling. But then there were people who were getting up and cheering and loving everything he was saying. And I was like, wow, this guy is very polarizing. And to be honest, like, as soon as I saw Trump running a few years ago in 2016, he was just so certain that it was so obvious he was going to win. And he went up, he debated, he destroyed the other people, and then I remember telling my friends, I'm like, dude, this guy's winning. Like, he is winning. And everyone's like, no, like, there's no way this guy Trump is winning. Because, again, I'm in Canada where most people are very left-wing. And essentially, he would say things, and I'd be like, oh, that's like a very polarizing thing. And again, I was studying marketing, so I'm looking at these things, and I'm like, wow, like, this guy is probably going to win. And then sure enough, he won. And as soon as he won, I'm like, man, like, I don't see why this guy wouldn't win again. I can't see anyone really debating him, to be honest, because he's very certain, right? And that's another one of the principles of the attractive character is being very certain. And by doing those other things, it really just makes it easier for you to, I think, persuade the people who are your diehard fans. And there's a difference between certainty and confidence, which I'll talk about more in the future. But with your marketing messages, whichever niche you're in, again, look for those ideas that are common knowledge, but then look for those crazy ideas and find something very in between. But it has to be something where you're kind of parting the seas, right? Where you have all these people who are kind of into you, and then at some point you say something, and a lot of people who are going to love you at first, you can say some things and they'll eventually hate you, right? And this is where I think a lot of people are very afraid. They're very afraid to share their opinions and be very vulnerable in some cases. But this is really what you need to do to win in your marketing. And again, it's going to get people talking about you organically. If you say something that's controversial and, again, goes against a lot of what the masses have to say, but at the same time, it's not too crazy, and some people are going to be like, yeah, I kind of agree with that, and it's something maybe new they haven't seen before, that's ideally how you're going to get people to really become diehard fans of yours, right? And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but there's an article called 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. I believe it was written in 2001, where he talks about how you don't need millions and millions of followers. You just need 1,000 true fans, right? And the only way to get true fans is to be very, very polarizing, all right? And again, when you look at a guy like Trump, he hasn't let up with this, right? Which is why he won. And I think this is why a lot of the people, from what I can see in the United States right now, is that when you actually look at the other side right now, the Democrats, like, they honestly just kind of look in shambles, in my opinion. Again, I say this objectively. I am so in the middle. I really don't care that much, to be honest, about politics. I just find it's funny. I honestly have very little trust for politicians. And the main reason is I'm a absolutely massive skeptic of virtually absolutely everything. And I think that's why I've become such a good copywriter, right? Because when I hear someone's claim, I'll think of all the other stuff that I had, and I'll be like, okay, like, why would this not work? Like tell me more about this. Like, you know, I think of my main objections, I write them down, and that helps me, again, come up with better marketing messages, right? And I use a lot of this stuff as well with people. When I push them, I'm like, all right, you need to say something polarizing. Like, what's something that everyone in your niche thinks? If it's weight loss, right? It's like, you need to drink a certain amount of water per day. Like, I've encouraged someone where I'm like, hey, just tell them, like, not to drink water for a couple of days, and that's a quick way for them where they do like a dry fast where they don't lose weight. And they've gone on and put a video, and in some cases it's one of their most viewed videos online, where it's like they'll say something super controversial. Again, it's usually a new topic that people aren't necessarily talking about, but when we post it, we put all sorts of little keywords and stuff in there that helps it get ranked with those other videos. And again, we usually, if it's YouTube, for example, we'll put a very clickbaity thumbnail and title for that video. But with your own marketing messages, again, it needs to be something where you're really finding the people that resonate with you. And it's better that way, because one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is that it's impossible to please everyone else. I have to remind myself of this constantly. I'm trying to make everyone else happy and I'm making myself unhappy. That's usually a sign that I'm not being polarizing enough. So in those cases, when I have people who, when I'm not being very polarizing, this is the time when I'm like, all right, like, there's a few sayings that I think really hit home with this. The first is this old, I think it's like a Buddhist or an old Confucius saying, where it goes something like, they disparage one who speaks too much, they disparage one who speaks too little, they even disparage one who speaks in moderation. So no matter what you do in life, people are going to talk smack about you, right? People are going to dislike what you say, no matter what you do in your life. And there was this one, I think, in Swingers with Vince Vaughn, where he says something like that. He's like, not everyone likes me. I don't have to like everyone else, and I'm absolutely fine with that, right? So again, I wouldn't worry too much about this. I mean, especially if you're listening to this in one of the first world countries like Canada or the United States or Australia or the UK, where you usually have free speech or some degree of free speech, because in my country there's certain things you can't say that'll get you in trouble. But when it comes to, again, speaking your mind, like, you want to be very polarizing. And this works. This is, again, why I think this is why they call them like presidential campaigns or election campaigns, right? Because it's very similar to a marketing campaign, right? It's very similar to like a Dungeons and Dragons style campaign, where it's like, all right, we have an objective. It's going to be a journey. How do we get to that objective? Like, what are the steps to us actually achieving the goal that we want? So with your marketing messages, again, try and be polarizing with people, right? Try and be prolific. Don't say things that are too mainstream and common knowledge, because it's going to be boring. Don't say things that are too crazy and strange, because you're going to look like a complete weirdo and a savage to some people. Try and find things that are in the absolute middle. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. If you did, I want you to consider subscribing, consider sharing this with someone else, maybe even consider leaving a review on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated, because that way I can get feedback, I can get other ideas for episodes, and really just other things I can talk about in the future, and I'm sure anyone who's listening would really appreciate that as well. My name is Matty Milligan, and I will see you next time on another episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Woo!